Maengay tribo, anak ti sangay apo. In may dagan tutukot sa nalpunta ko ay maengay nanlupuan gayanggang kanut kaisan. In may dat ka ilokwan tay natugding ginawang ay sinkidenget pay ay undang nin Taolis kayanggang daim na tuktukduan santong galisang ay kilit talab tataan sininday mankan ay sandeoy pay ay agsapa nanrogi nan bibinuso ay nat at tupay na kayo pay unong ay sandoy pay ay agsapa kinwanin wa ay dain takot man pupuden tulag ay mananakem ay
Welcome to everyone. You are watching again IP Talks, a monthly talk show covering topics of interest related to Indigenous people culture, values, issues, and more. So once again, this is Myra, Colis at your service, welcoming you with all cheers and excitement. And together with me tonight is, of course, none other than Renijune Abaya. And we will be your host for tonight's second episode of IP Talks, which is, of course, brought to you by Mavikas Foundation, the Netherlands.
Yes, thank you very much. It's Myra. It's me, Renijune Abaya, together with Myra, your host for tonight. So we all know we have audience from Facebook, from Zoom, and also live on Facebook. So feel free to interact and ask questions, comments, and of course, share this video.
Yes, indeed, June. And as you are watching now, please feel free to share, like, and also invite your friends to join us because we have a very, very special guest tonight, and we are so happy to have him with us. Right, June?
Yes. Before we go to the big part, we acknowledge our viewers and of course our guests. Thank you for coming. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us until the end. And stay with us. And we would like also to thank the sponsors. We have sponsors here. I have my list. Tiban, Catimo and family, ICBE or Igorot Cordillera Bima Akiuro, Renijune Abaya, Yvonne Kay and Belen, Christine Moncado, and Mr. Cesar Taguba.
Yes, and of course, we would like to acknowledge also the presence of Daisy and Paul Valentin from the UK, Hil Catimo from Spain, Manong Rick and Manang Alice from Belgium, and of course, Manong Richard from California, and hope some more will join us later. So thank you so much once again. Yeah. And as already mentioned, IP Talks is a monthly event organized by Mabika. So we just actually started last month and we hope to be able to keep it up till the end of this year, right?
Yeah. Yes. And it's already the second episode. It's so exciting.
Yeah, and last month we spoke about what of our culture do we want to preserve and why. And this month and at this very hour, we would like to look into how this culture of ours, the Igorot Cordillera culture, or as indigenous people, has thrived throughout the years of colonization.
Yes.
Wow, yeah, heavy topic.
So, okay.
June?
Yes, yes, yes. So, and speaking of our history, sorry for that, colonization, what comes to mind when we hear the number 333?
I mean 333.
Yes. For 333 years, the Philippines has been colonized by the Spaniards. In particular, that was from the year 1565 to 1898 that Spain ruled over the Philippines. That's so long.
Yeah, so just imagine more than 300 years. Yeah, and as we were taught since primary school, it all began in 1521. That was when Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan, which is part of our topic tonight, was first spotted in Summer Island. We know that already from school. Interestingly, we will revisit more of our history with our guest tonight, whom I would describe as a master of the creative arts. Parang, you know, like a master of all creative arts,
Yes.
really. And because he is an actor, he's a performer, he's a writer, he's a filmmaker, and award winner. And most importantly, an indigenous person himself from the Cordillera region of the Philippines. So how proud we all are, right?
Yes, indeed. A fellow indigenous person. So, according to
Born in
Wikipedia,
yeah.
I also read Wikipedia, he was born in Baguio City, but according to what I saw in the previous, he is Ifugao. So is it is it Baguio or? But okay, yeah, it is a privilege having you here. It is an honor that we are having you tonight. So his name is Mr. Eric de Guia.
That's his real name.
I was.
Yes, I also read on Wikipedia that he changed his name to Kidlat Tahimik, which means silent lightning. Okay, welcome Manong Kidlat. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and it's really an honor. So despite your very busy schedule, you still came to attend this IP talks with us.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have all you people with our Cordillera spirit conquering the world in all corners of the world.
Yes.
In spite of that 333 years, di ba kung ano ni Carmen Guerrero Nakpil, we Filipinos have lived 333 years in a convent and 50 years in Hollywood. So, ano yung epekto ng almost 400 years of colonial suppression of the cultures, no?
Yeah, and hopefully we could talk more about that indeed, right? But before we go on, Kuya Kidlat, we really would like to thank you for responding positively to our invitation. And of course, we don't forget to mention your son, Kidlat Jr., for helping us to get to you, because it was kind of difficult to find you, but there you are. So
Can I correct you?
Yeah?
Can I correct you? Kasi si Kidlat, binigay ko yung pangalan sa kanya when he was born in 1975. And then I adopted Kidlat Tahimik as my pseudonym in 1977. So my son is Kidlat Senior.
Oh, okay. So nauna
Ako
talaga
yung
siya,
Kidlat
right?
Junior. Kasi it doesn't have to do with age. It's kung sino unang gumamit, di ba? So siya
Okay,
yung
so
Kidlat
it's
Senior. Ako yung Kidlat Junior. Okay. Go on.
now we know.
Good, thank you. So, siya pala ang Kidlat Senior, so nauna pala siya. Yeah? But for our audience watching us now and later, also you must have also gotten an idea from the introductory video that we just played that our focus for discussion tonight is the ongoing art exhibit of Kidlat Tahimik in Madrid. And of course, in particular, we would like to understand and hopefully be able to share more on why the exhibit matters and how does it relate to us as IPs, right? And now and in the future, Kuya Kidlat?
Alam niyo, nung inimbita ako to do this show here, at first it was going to be another installation, another assemblage of objects that talk about my advocacy, no? Yung importante yung cultural diversity ng mundo. We have to preserve it because homogenization is the name of the game today, di ba? Globalization is always about homogenizing everybody, so we're all good consumers, and the best way is to make us forget where we came from, because if we are everybody, we are like everybody, then maybe it's easier for them to target our pockets and our wallets. Yeah. So that's part of the problem. But anyway, more important than that, Parakenyakti Kultura is like it's a double meaning for me, no? A culture is our energizer, no? Kumbaga parang engine ng kotse. Pero at the same time, culture is also yung preno natin. You can have a very good car with the best engine, pero kung wala kang preno, you will not get anywhere, di ba? Matutumba ka dyan sa next corner, you will bump into the tree, you will never get to your destination. And I think that's our problem today. Nawala yung ating kultura because those 400 years, and especially the Americans were nalaingda nga benevolent assimilation. They made us assimilate their ways. And I don't want to judge whether it's good or bad, but if we don't also have nung hanga maintenance ako dagijay preno natin, we will not have a healthy, balanced direction. That is why I'm always fighting for culture. It's not culture na ay EJ Museum adati gansa, adati costumes kasta, but it's really culture is a inner, both an energizer. So it makes us decide what we want to be as a people. But also we need to have a preno kasi nung kopya-kopya lang tayo di kultura ti Amerikano, you know, or copying also the whoever our idols are or and then we try to forget where we come from. It's not healthy.
Yes.
So sometimes people think I'm very anti-Americano. No? Maybe that is an effect of we were very strongly colonized. Our culture was completely subdued, and we don't like to be better speaking better than those New Yorkers, you know, man. Or we want to be more sophisticated, like the Parisians, whatever. And we're trying to be so often what we really are. But maybe we cannot help it. No? With globalization, we have to keep in step with the rest of the world. But apay nga kababayan ti kultura ti lolok at ti lolak. No? And that's where I think we have to be aware of that. If the colonialists taught us to be ashamed of our origins, we are losing so much. But it's not only we who lose so much. The world also loses so much every time a culture dies, every time a language
That's true. Yeah.
disappears. Yung diversity ng kultura ng mundo, nagiging pareho na lahat. Humanity loses something like that. So there's so much to offer. The Cordillera cultures have so much to offer to the world. But at first we were all taught, and I think many of us here, we belong to the generation. I mean, I'm almost 80, but my lolos were the first people who were brainwashed na, ay, kababay niya agbahag, agwano. Try to be like, when wear your coat and tie, you know. You know, when I was a child in Baguio, Aduti Igorots were walking on Session Road. They adopted the Americana, no, because it's warm, no. Pero they still like to wear their bahag. So we always said, when kasta ti coat and tie, you wear your coat, pero ti tie mo is down there, no.
Sa baba.
You don't wear the tie up there.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that kind of hybridity is very healthy, no. Pero it became a butt of jokes. Na why are they not trying to be like our American mentors, man? So as long as that's where I call about the preno. The preno says, teka muna, bakit natin ibabasura lahat yung kalaman ng lolo at lola natin? There's so much to be proud of because they knew they had a very strong harmony with nature, and that is why they were able to produce a civilization. I think it's a very high civilization, yung rice terraces that have survived 3,000 years.
Yes.
The rice terraces, which is a food security system, no? And it was not planned by economists, no, at the Department of Agriculture. It was not planned by people who had PhDs in hydraulic water management. Basta't ang muda nga, if you are maintaining a small forest on top of your rice terrace system,
there's water.
It will continue year in, year out to produce your harvest. And that's why UNESCO recognized the rice terraces as a living cultural heritage, di ba?
Yes.
Living tangible heritage. If we compare, even the pyramids in Egypt, no? The Great Wall of China, wow, monumental. But they're dead monuments. They were made from slave labor. Pero hindi na ginagamit, pang selfie na lang. Oy, let's selfie tako pyramids. But they're dead monuments. But if you look at the rice terraces, they are still being harvested. They're being planted every year, and at the end of the harvest, wow, sige, let us celebrate.
Yeah.
The cycle is complete, and that is the holistic way of life na balance yung forward energy of the engine. It is balanced with a strong preno na we know nung anyati amuti lolok at lolak is important, and it will balance our way of life. So na-maintain yung rice terraces. And we shouldn't talk of the rice terrace as just a touristic wonder. It's really the best proof that yung kaalaman ng katutubo, yung kaalaman ng ating mga lolo at lola are worth fighting for.
Yes. And the best
And that-
artist.
And the world is searching for that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Because,
interesting you actually mentioned that, Kuya Kidlat, because indeed, as time passed by, parang we try to kind of like forget because of gaya ng sabi mo yung globalization, modernization, and now homogenization, as you said. These are indeed what is like keeping us away or apart from our roots. But is that also like the theme of the exhibit you had in Spain? Because we were wondering why the exhibit's name is named Magellan, Marilyn, Mike, and Fray Damaso. Of course, we have like 500 years of rock star conquerors. It's really like a very striking title. But I wonder what's with the name of
Yes.
the exhibit.
The first time I saw
Ayan.
that, oh, what does Mickey and Marilyn, was that Marilyn Monroe? And
Yeah.
what's the connection of it?
ayan,
Yes.
siguro, we don't notice it, but these are just entertainment icons that we see on TV or in the movies. And I like to equate it with si Magellan na dumating 500 years ago, was the first rock star conquistador
Yeah,
that up to now, di ba, alam niyo yung kanta ni Yoyoy Villamin,
Yeah,
it
oo.
was in 1521, the Philippines was discovered by Magellan. Maybe, I'm sure my brother Yoyoy will probably try to correct his lyric na we were not discovered, we were always there. Pero ever since they came, have been imposing the culture on us. And so Marilyn Monroe is the Hollywood culture naman, di ba? So kaya tayo nga, we want to all be like her. Because it's cool to be like her, or to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And then Mickey Mouse is also, akala natin parang laruan lang yan, patawa lang. Pero we have lost also our own stories of maybe funny characters in our own folklore, di ba? So nado-dominate yung kultura natin kasi nadi-distract tayo ng mga, it's cool to be like Marilyn Monroe, or it's cool to be funny like Mickey Mouse. And then the last guy there is Padre Damaso. Okay. Padre Damaso was the character naman na dinabas ni Jose Rizal. And it was a metaphor for the mga abusadong praile, di ba? Whether you're a Catholic or not, there were these abusado people who used religion maybe as a way to get their personal power and benefits. Pero we have to recognize lang yung phenomena na it was the culture that was being eroded, no? Yung kultura natin, basta sabi sige, mas madaling i-govern itong mga Indios if we make them at least speak enough Espanol. Hoy, kamusta, amigo? Or if we accept their way of dressing, and it's easier to get us to pay taxes once we are in the same frequency as their way of governing life, no? And that's why it was I think that was more effective, the policy of cultural suppression, than the actual use of military might, torture, genocide. So as a matter of fact, siguro when the Americans came to the Philippines, alam mo, pagod na sila. They had the 100 Years War with the Indians, hindi ba? So, it was just a common power trip. Ay, tayo mga cowboys, kayang-kaya natin yung mga pipitsugin ng mga Indians. And they kept decimating them. They kept running them off their territories. And then when they finally reached the West Coast, oops, where's the next one? Oy, Philippines. And then they came and, well, sayang, because we just won our revolution against the Spaniards. We had declared our first Philippine Republic. Kaya naman natin gumawa ng constitution, di ba?
Yeah.
We declared our republic. Pero, siyempre, they had to find ways to say that, oh, those Indians cannot govern. We have to teach them. What? You'll teach us how to build rice terraces? You will teach us how to have food security? No, but for them, they want us to join their consumer industrial culture. Anyway, okay, that's going too far. But in terms of the exhibition, ayun ang tema ko, no?
Yeah. It's a pity though, because we would like to really see it in real life, but we only saw photos and videos of it. Thank you for those who documented. And really, but from the looks of it, it seems like indeed we could see the ones that you're mentioning, like when the Magellan, because we saw like a statue of Magellan, and like also with there was which is something new to me, like there was a statue of Magellan and someone beside him na parang katutubo, and then I saw on the reports like, oh, this is someone named Ikeng. I didn't even know he got a translator, so that's what's kind of like interesting. Maybe you can tell us more about that also.
Okay.
Before we proceed, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
We have viewers from Facebook. May we a little bit say hello to them? Mercy Quinto.
Okay.
Singfao Silaw, Heidi Marcelo Hardenberg, and maybe you have also some. Maybe you have, if you have questions and comments, please feel free to just chat in the chat box or on the Zoom.
Oh yes, and also for us here in the Zoom, if you want to ask Kuya Kidlat anything or try to interact, just raise your hand, and then you're always free to speak up. Yeah.
Anyway, to answer your question lang, last year, 2021 was the 500th anniversary nung pagdating nila Magellan.
Yeah.
What we call Pilipinas today, no? Pero I'm glad that at least the president decided not to celebrate Magellan, pero to celebrate Lapu-Lapu's victory. Kasi tuloy-tuloy ang colonial mentality natin kung we treat Magellan as the rock star who discovered the Philippines. And I think that's where the preno is. Kasi usually nga, since the world is celebrating that first circumnavigation, and history books are always writing about these great conquistadors. And it's about time we tell our version of the story, di ba? Hindi pwede kayo palagi ang bida. Why are you always the hero? You're always, because you killed 500 Indians in Mexico, or Pizarro killed so many Aztecs in Peru, di ba? And for a long time, that was what history was about. Wow, ang galing ng mga armies nila. They kept conquering everybody, and they were teaching those IPs how to be civilized. But anyway, all that is part of the game that they had. But we have to be aware of it ngayon para hindi tuloy-tuloy yung hinahihiya natin yung kultura natin. And I think this is what, okay, so just that little story that you asked. On that boat, if you notice tung sa, ayan, yan.
Yeah, this one, right?
There is Magellan on the top, pointing in that direction. Pero ito si Iking. And Iking is, well, it's the nickname of Enrique de Malaca, okay? Who is written, he is mentioned in the book of Pigafetta. Antonio Pigafetta was the diary keeper of the voyage. He was an Italian who joined the voyage. Tapos he was writing that may slave si Magellan. Maybe he was a slave, maybe he was a valet, maybe he was a cook, labandera. But he was also the interpreter ni Magellan pagdating sa Cebu. Okay. I wanted to show, and because nabanggit ni Pigafetta na marunong magsalita ng Bisaya si Enrique pagdating sa Cebu. Okay, so remember, binili, okay, this is the globe, Magellan bought the slave in Malacca. Kaya he gave the name Enrique, Christian name, and de Malacca kasi binili kita sa Malacca. So that is your name. We don't know what his name was before. Then he brings Enrique with him to Europe. In Europe, Magellan wants to find another route to go to the East Asia. And he's able to convince the king of Spain, si Carlos I, to build 5 ships. And that was the official start of the expedition from the Spanish side. So 5 ships left Sevilla, tapos tumuloy ng South America, tapos kinapaka pa nila yung South America para mahanap yung butas, yung Magellan Strait. Then they cross the Pacific. Pero yung sinulat ni Pigafetta, pagdating nila sa islands natin, yung unang island, sabi ni Magellan, uy, kayo manggi yung mga tao dito, they're brown skin, they have black hair. Kamukha mo, Enrique. Why don't you try to talk to them? Baka ito yung islands that we're looking for, yung Spice Islands. And somehow, yung first island was Samar, di ba? Anong salita doon? Waray-waray. And nakasulat doon, yung first island, hindi nagkaintindihan si Enrique at yung natives. Don't forget na every island had its own language, di ba? Pero pagdating niya sa Cebu, wow, marunong siya magsalita. Kaya siyang nag-negotiate kay Radyo Humabon, siya yung translator ni Magellan. So para sa akin, he had reached the island where his native tongue was, where he learned his language, di ba? So the first man to go around the world was not Magellan. Una-una, si Magellan, let's say sa Malacca ang pinaka-eastern point niya, tumuloy all around. Pero pagdating niya sa Mactan, tinepok siya ni Lapu-Lapu.
Lapu-Lapu, yeah.
So, kulang pa siya ng 1,500 kilometers from Mactan to Malacca para makompleto niya yung buong circumnavigation niya. Kulang pa siya ng 1%. Okay? Nagawa niya yung 99. Pero si Enrique, kung marunong siya magsalita ng language doon, so where did he come from? Siguro nung bata siya, na-pick up siya ng mga pirates o mga slave traders from Cebu or Mactan, brought him to Malacca, and sold him to Magellan. So nagawa niya yung unang 1%, di ba? And then Magellan took him on 99%. So 99 plus 1, ang unang nag 100%, ang score na 100% was this little interpreter called Enrique. And in my film, I decided to make him an Ifugao. Kasi I don't know very much about Cebu costumes. I thought this, since I was acting as Enrique, hindi ako maka-hire ng ibang actors. Si Kidlat Tahimik is the cheapest actor available. You can call him at any time. And he lasted for the 40 years that I made the film. So he was my favorite actor. But then because of that, okay, that was how this story developed for me. But many historians admit it is possible that the first person to circumnavigate the world was not a European, pero he was one of our islanders.
Yes, indeed.
So, para sa akin, yung kultura niya is why he was also a very strong survivor. I think his way of, like a lot of our Cordilleras, wherever they go up the mountains or wherever they also, as OFWs, they can fit anywhere. And this is for me a central theme. It was his indigenous knowledge that made him a survivor.
And a fighter.
And the fighter, yeah.
Indeed. So
anyway, yeah.
It is very interesting. Yes, it's very interesting that you have said about the name of Inrik Iking. It became so
Iking.
Yeah,
Iking, yeah.
Yeah, what we also find very interesting in the fact that indeed we have reached 500 years anniversary of the first encounter between Spain and the Philippines. Is this also the theme of your art exhibit?
Is that also the
theme? The theme.
Yeah. Alam nyo, I got interested in this character, this indigenous person who was given a colonial name, Enrique, no? And I got interested in him in 1979 pa. And I started making that film in 1979. I will provide your group with a link so you can look at it. But I'm sure baka mainip kayo kasi it's not in a usual Hollywood format na tadyan, ang galing, puro it's going to be a very slow film, pero you have to ride with that filmmaker. No? But I think it will be interesting for those of you who are interested. Kasi in a way, I casted him as a Ifugao, wearing his Ifugao bahag, but he is representative of all our native cultures who have been, as Carmen Nakpil wrote, we have been put in the convent and for 333 years and 50 years in Hollywood. But that, in spite of that, ang nalaing ti kultura takong we have been able to survive in this planet, no?
Yeah.
But we have so much to offer the planet.
We do.
We have so much, so knowledge to do. Even just that, that's always my favorite example. Our ability to maintain rice terraces for 3,000 years. Because our forefathers, ang muda nga, nung adati buyong or pinugo, this forest on top of every, when you go to Ifugao, makita yung every set of rice terraces, on the top, adati, muyong or pinugo.
Nakadintik muyong.
It was a small forest to protect the little spring. Aba? Nung adati bukal nga batit, just a small water, it will feed the first terrace and then it will spread to the next 3 terraces and then to the next 10 terraces. And even if it's just a small little spring, you can irrigate thousands and thousands of hectares without buying a Japanese pump. Pero today, we're all being taught, hey, you have to buy this technology from Japan.
Yes.
You have to get all these gadgets from that. But they knew how to find that balance already long ago. And we have to believe that, wow, nalaingayan ti kultura tako. we can just bring that back. I'm really happy to note that now a lot of the young people are beginning to feel, hey, apang nagpalukot ako. Why do we have to believe what they say? Why do we have to believe the movies that it's better to look like Marilyn Monroe and be in a fast crashing cars like Tom Cruise, etc. Let us look at our own endowments, our own assets, and assets including our puwets. Why are we ashamed to show? Why are we ashamed to wear our G-string just because some missionary said, "Ay, kababa yung tiput mo, tiubot mo." We don't have to believe them, di ba?
We really hope the young people nowadays will really be still very proud of their indigenous identity. That's our big hope, talaga. But also like what I wanted to ask is yung about, because you're talking about the earlier with the story of Ikang, the kind of like slavery. And I remember also in your exhibit there is this like if I can show it this picture, yeah, you have it also in your exhibit, and I think it talks about the exposition of Filipinos, including Igorots, that time in 1887 in Madrid. But what's interesting is that the venue where you had the exhibit is the same place where they exhibit the Igorots in 1887. Is that correct? And
so that was a very exciting thing for me. Okay, I was invited to do an exhibition there, and akala ko, sige, I'll just do something about Magellan, and then also I will do something about the contemporary. The struggle today is because we are also always being brainwashed by Hollywood movies. We are losing our culture. But when they've told me that, wow, that Palacio Crystal was built in 1887. It was built by the Spanish government to justify, why are we colonizing those people on the other side?
Yeah.
Why are we proud that the sun never sets on the Spanish Empire because we have those islands on the other side of the Pacific? So they built this Palacio Crystal for the Exposición General de Islas Filipinas. It was really, in those days, nag-industrialize na yung mga countries, marunong na sila gumawa ng bakal and use glass. So this was one of their pasikat sila, no?
Oh, that was 1887.
Yeah. So they built it there, and at that time Rizal was a student in Madrid.
Yeah.
So I wanted to put it together na nakita ni Rizal, uy, bakit na ginagamit itong mga Igorots yan as exhibits in the Palacio Crystal? If you notice there at the bottom on that arm, there's sayang hindi lang nagsindi yung neon doon. It says Nuestros Filipinos Civilizados. So it's saying, see, we are civilizing the Filipinos. That's why we have to be there. It is our destiny to make them civilized and to be like us. And I think that was the thing that, for me, my irony yun, this whole palace has been used to justify colonialism. So it was an extra theme. Kaya yung ginawa ko, ang laki-laki kasi nitong kwan. If you saw that building,
yeah,
it's so
you mean the palace?
Parang tatlong basketball courts yan, on the right side. Yeah, that's one basketball court. On the other end, another basketball court sa likod. And so I decided to make parang tatlong narratives, no? On the one side is the 1521, nung dumating si Magellan. So there's also the Battle of Mactan. Meron doon sa likod. Ayan, ito, Battle of Mactan.
This one, right? Yeah.
Ayan, okay. Sa gitna is Magellan, no, in his armor. Natutumba na siya, okay? On the right side, the guy standing there with the shield, that's Lapu-Lapu. Okay?
Mm.
Yung nasa kanan on that right way.
Ito, yeah.
Yan. Pero
And
sa
this one?
narrative ko, ito yung asawa ni Lapu-Lapu. Okay?
Mm.
Asawa niya, okay, you don't read about Bulakna in the Western books. But in Cebu folklore, ang asawa ni Lapu-Lapu was Princess Bulakna. Now, Princess
wow.
Bulakna was an IP. She was okay because she was the wife of one. She was a leader. She was also a warrior. She was also a beauty. She was also a Mombaki. I mean, isang babaylan. She was also a spiritual leader. And she was also a makata. She was poetic, an artist. So she combines everything that I think we would find in an ideal holistic human being. So I gave this role that in the final battle, di ba, it's very conceivable na pagka it's the final fight to protect your culture, your way of life, everybody comes in. Man, women, children, kung sino pwedeng makatulong, everybody comes in. So that was my narrative there. The other thing to take note is, if you notice, si Bulakna is carrying a stick, no?
Yeah, this one. Yeah.
Ito yan. Our niece was the martial arts of the Cebuanos. Pre-colonial, before the Spanish came. Magaling na sila sa...
Our niece.
So, nung natapos na yung main battle, siguro nag-fire ng cannons yung mga ship, tapos may mga ginamit ng mga barrel, mga crossbow. Nung pa na, mano-mano na, di ba? Ayun, doon lumabas yung galing natin. Chak, 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 chak. And
Pawikan doing there.
ano na?
How about this big turtle? There's pawikan on top. Is this a part of it? Yes?
Are you this
just,
one?
Yeah. The pawikan, and throughout the Palacio de Crystal, I have always hanging things where the spirits are also coming to the aid.
Yeah.
Ayun. Okay, this is the dapay in the sky. Okay. So you have your three sections on behind us. Here would be the boat, the ship, 1521. Tapos yon yung where you were pointing. That is the battle between two goddesses of the wind. No? Mga
This
bathala
one.
ng hangin. Yeah.
Right.
No. Yeah, yan. Okay.
Yeah.
This is an interesting story. I think it's good for you also to know. Okay. Dalawang diyosa ng hangin, no? Dalawang bathala ng hangin. On the right side is Inhabyan. He's the goddess of the wind sa Ifugao. Okay? Ang kwento diyan, Inhabyan was a weaver. He was siguro weaving a wano or a bahag, and he was using yung backstrap loom. Okay, alam niyo yun? Di ba, may belt sa likod mo? Tapos, you stretch the strings, and then with your shuttle, you keep weaving your bahag. Okay, and then, at that time, she was an ordinary mortal. Tapos the gods saw her and said, subukan nga natin to. So they started blowing her around. No? Pero kasi she had her backstrap loom, para siyang may safety belt, di ba, sa kotse. So hindi siya nagtilapon, hindi siya basta napunta. She survived the test. Na-impress yung mga gods. I said, okay, from now on, Inhabyan, ikaw ngayon ang magiging bathala ng hangin. So ngayon, whenever there's a typhoon coming to Ifugao, the people pray to Inhabyan. Oh, Inhabyan, sana ibahin mo yung direction ng bagyo. O sana mas mahina yung mga hangin para hindi masira. Spare our village, parang gano'n. So that's the story of yung bathala ng hangin ng Ifugao. Ngayon, ang kalaban niya dyan,
mukhang si Marilyn Monroe.
Okay, yan ang bathala ng hangin ng Hollywood. Okay? Everybody knows about her skirt flying all over the place.
Yeah.
So I call her a goddess of the wind. So, in my narrative, she's saying, alis dyan, Hollywood. Marami kaming magandang kwento dito. Hindi namin kailangan yung mga sex and violence stories nyo. Alis dyan, Hollywood. We're tired of your Harvey Weinstein stories. Stay away. So this is a little naughty narrative that I put in there.
Yeah.
And then, okay, on the back, in the skies, you will see all these figures, no?
You mean these ones?
The boats on the in the back.
On the
May
boat.
mga-
Oh,
no.
here.
Go
Yeah,
back to-
yeah.
You can go back there. Yung blue and yellow.
Here.
Okay? Yeah. These are mga bangka, and then on top of them are like mga roots, no?
Oh, yeah.
These
yeah.
roots are really parang another wind gods na humihipad sila. Pero yung kalaban nila, if you see there in front of that one that you're pointing to, may missile, no? May mga rocket ships, no? At nakasakay, ito yung mga missiles ng Hollywood. So yan, where the cursor is now,
Yeah.
nakasakay dyan, we don't have a close-up, but that's Wonder Woman, no? Tapos, in the one on the right side, facing the one on the corner, right? Meron ring isang missile dyan, si Captain America. Yung mga
There's also a
superheroes.
missile here, yeah.
Ayan, that one si Mickey Mouse na nakasakay dyan.
Oh.
And then a little bit off the one is Spider-Man. So inaatake yung kultura natin ng mga superheroes nila, di ba? So we don't
Nice.
hear anymore about our local heroes.
Yeah,
I think many young people don't know about Makling Dulag. They don't know about other warriors. They don't even know about Inhabyan. So this is my theme here. Na we have to keep Hollywood at bay so that our young people can also know and appreciate yung kalaman ng ating mga lolo at lola.
I just have a silly question. The entry of the exhibit is free. How did you ship those large
artifacts to Madrid?
Big.
Alam mo yung ganyan, the Reina Sofia Museum is one of the biggest museums in Europe, no? Siguro after the Louvre in Paris, yung Reina Sofia Museum, they have the budget to, if they commission an artist, they paid for the freight of 3 containers.
Yes. Wow.
But not the ordinary 20-footers, the 40-footers, yung talagang mahabang containers. 3 noon, pinuno ko ng mga objects that would tell my story. And I have a team of collaborators, mga very talented Ifugao carvers who made Marilyn Monroe, made Inhabyan, si Enrique at si Marlene. So I could tell my story using the talents of an indigenous art form that is really since centuries nalaing all these Cordilleras are such good carvers. They also even carve the mountains with rice terraces, di ba?
Your exhibit is a lot of stories to tell.
Again?
Your exhibit has a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah, I think I'm basically a storyteller.
Yes.
I want to tell the story of the indigenous of our people. You know, I like to tell this story. My best friend is also my mentor, si Lopez na Uyak. He just died last September. But he was a carver who went to Baguio, and then he lived there for years and years, and he kept, because that's where the tourists go, so they would make money in the barrel. They would make smiling Buddhas, whatever, kung ano yung demand, no? And then he realized suddenly, in the late 80s, he realized, wow, apay ngayon, I'm always consuming wood for my home, but I do not give back anything. And then suddenly, overnight, he became an ecologist. He started planting seedlings. And I'm sure he has almost distributed 1 million seedlings to different barangays. When he decided to go back home and said, okay, I have to teach my people to go back to the old ways, to have harmony again with our nature, to bring back the pinugo and the muyong as a way of keeping a balance. And okay, see, Lopez, no, he always mispronounced the word indigenous, no? And he would talk like, we indigenous people are always treated badly by the lowlanders. We must fight for our indigenous culture. Wow, apo nalaing ti mispronunciation na. He combined the word genius with indigenous, which says it all. The genius of the indigenous still lives. We just have to come back and use it to balance our lives. Then I further mispronounced the word. I said, hindi lang indigenous, indiogenous.
Indio. Indio.
Indio was the word that the Spanish used.
Yeah.
Lahat ng mga colonized people were called Indios.
Indios,
diba?
yeah.
So, maski na naging Indio tayo, maski na na-colonize tayo, pero yung genius ng indigenous, naroon pa rin. So that's my favorite word that I teach to my students nung nagtuturo ako sa UP. Kung gagawa kayo ng thesis nyo, yung thesis film niyo pang graduation, let us tap our indigenous talents. Let us use our indigenous stories. Let us use our indigenous themes. Let's go back and show the world, ay, apo, nalaing ti Cordillera.
Yes.
And I think that is what our culture has to be. We just have to believe in our culture.
Yeah.
And the world will respect us. We have to be able to, okay, if you're an Igorot banker and maybe one day you are sent to Washington to negotiate with the World Bank. But then, you can look at the World Banker and say, oh, I am a Cordillera, but I can look you in the eye and I can negotiate with you. They always, sometimes if we have learned from our colonial culture na nalaing dagay nga mga dayuhan, they all look like Tom Cruise, or they look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, or they look like Marilyn Monroe. They are smarter than us. Ay, apo no. We just have to believe in our yung galing sa indigenous kultura natin, and I think that's why I think the whole panorama of Cordillerans living all over the world, if you just assert a little bit more what you know from your lolo and from your lola, I think the world will say, wow. And I think that is why I think you are all respected in your cultures, in your locations everywhere, because they know in a quiet way there is a indigenous strength in the Cordillerans. Which also, go back to the exhibit again. When you see the exhibit, okay, there was that replica of the Palacio de Crystal, no? That steel structure. And then kanina, I think you saw, there was can you bring back that picture of the fraile?
Oh, the
Padre Damaso.
Okay.
with the Magellan.
No, the one that is dancing with the with a sexy girl.
Oh yeah, that too. I was wondering what is that about.
Okay.
I will.
Anyway,
Oh, this one. This one. Oh wait.
one of the narratives in that part is that when that 1887, ayan, when the 1887 exposition was done, si Rizal heard about. He was a student then in Europe, and he heard about why they were exhibiting these igorots in the Palacio Crystal. So he wrote a letter to Blumentritt and apay nga, why are you treating us like a human zoo? Why are you displaying us like animals in a zoo? And the year after that was when he wrote the El Fili, no? Anyway, sayang, naputol dito sa picture. Just to the right of this couple here, the Padre Damaso, is a statue of Rizal. I carved, we had it carved from a tree. But I always like to show Rizal as wearing his, di ba we always see Rizal wearing a coat, di ba? Naka-Americana palagi, naka-winter coat. Because those were the 1887 was when the photography was bago pa lang, 88, early 1880. So picture taking was becoming more common. And syempre, everybody gusto nilang spooting sila, nakabihis sila, you know. So all the propagandists were always wearing Americana and tie and, you know, top hats. But I always like to depict Jose Rizal as underneath his overcoat, he's wearing his bahag. Okay? That is my symbolism. I have many statues like that are, you see Rizal na nakabahag siya. Now, maybe some colonial-minded people will be offended. Why are you showing him wearing an uncivilized bahag? I would say no. I like to represent Rizal wearing his bahag. Maybe he never really wore one, but he is still connected to his spiritual bahag. No? He's still connected to his culture. If, you know, we are being taught to admire Rizal. Ay, wow, si Rizal. Sumulat siya ng nobela in Espanyol. Ang galing pa niya mag-Espanyol. Oh, wow, si Rizal. Rizal operated his mother's eyes. And his mother was having some problem with eyes. But he operated on her with Western ophthalmology. At nung naka-exile siya sa Dapitan, he was doing an irrigation system with Western engineering methods. But what will that teach our young people? Ay, nalaing gayam ni Jose Rizal because he was westernized writing, westernized operating, westernized engineering. When maybe we can turn the table a little bit and say, no, he could do all those Western things because inside he was still connected to his cultural strength. He was still, in the case of Cordilleran, still wearing his spiritual bahag. And I think if the young people know that, they will not be ashamed of what they learned from their lolo and lola. But
so I think it got to do also with our the education system, like what they teach at schools, right? So if that could be
that
changed.
is another thing that I've been trying to work on.
Yeah.
The schools were introduced by the Americans, not really to enlighten us so that we can become more enlightened citizens. It was really to make it easier to govern us. You know, if you can speak American English, I can convince you to pay taxes. I can convince you to accept a lower wages, whatever. And in the end, by killing our native strengths, and we you know, when the Americans came to Baguio, they put a dollar sign on every tree, di ba? Every pine tree. Oh, dollars that is agpakitaan. You will earn money from that. So we all started cutting down the trees, and now you don't smell the pine trees anymore in Baguio. But that is what overdose of Western culture has done to us, because we lost our cultural preno. So I represent Rizal as he's still wearing his bahag underneath his coat.
Yeah.
And if we stay connected with the IP knowledge of our grandfathers and grandmothers, I think we have so much to offer the world.
Yeah.
So that's part of my theme in this Palacio Crystal, no?
Yeah.
And I think it's good because the Spaniards are, many of the Spaniards don't know so much about the Filipino cultural colonial relationship with Spain. And that's what I try to bring. Parang I'm rewriting history. Oy, kala nyo, bida nyo si Magellan. Yung bida nyo, yun ang Belen. Yun ang bad boy sa amin. At yung sinasabi yung bad boy, yung silapu-lapu na pinatay yung kawawang hero nyo. Yun ang hero namin. So it's time we tell the story from our point of view, di ba?
I think you have a very good point there, Kuya Kidlat. It's really a strong message to tell the world, and especially in the Philippines, to indeed important to rewrite our history from our point of view, because like now we are also talking about decolonization of education, and also like what you have told us, the story is also new to me, and like, oh, why don't we like focus on, like, for example, the story you told about the wife of Lapu-Lapu, the story of Ikang, why don't find this in our history books, right? So I think it's time to really like do something, and because also of time, we really learn a lot from you. But then would like to also give a chance to those who are here in Zoom. Maybe they have some reaction or would like to ask Kuya Kidlat. Let us know. Please do unmute and comment on something. You have something in mind?
Yes,
I have something.
Oh yes, Daisy, Manang Daisy.
Yeah. I'm really glad that I was able to join in this very interesting discussion. What I take away from here that is new to me is the story about Enrique. That's really something new that I've learned along this process. And most of the discussions were interesting. There's just one thing that I would like to comment on is we are very proud to relate to the rice terraces as a symbol of what did you say, of our
the capacity
being
indigenous.
Indigenous. Isa lang na I think it's important to be talking about or telling stories that are also have factual foundation or factual evidence. So the mention of the rice terraces are not actually 3,000 years old, or because we have been involved with the development of rice, and an anthropologist, an American anthropologist, disputed actually the historical number of years that the rice terraces have been established.
Sabi na 500 years lang daw.
Hindi 3,000 years, kundi mga 100 years. And that is based on when the taro, taro, gabi, ube,
the root crops,
the gabi, that was when taro was not being produced anymore, and that was replaced by rice, and that's how the population also in Ifugao expanded. And that's when the rice terraces that only happened during around 600 years or something. So that's, I think, one fact that we need to be careful about when telling stories. The other thing I think that I'd like to add is the fact that maybe in our generation and in our parents' generation, there's some kind of shame or yung kinahihiya natin ang ating kultura, but actually our children and some young people, which I'm very glad that they are actually proud of their heritage and where they come from. And my children and their friends and, you know, the comments of our children are really, they are proud of being part of an Igorot. The fact that they are half Europeans and half Igorots. And yet, when it comes to standing up for being an Igorot, my son, my children studied in Durham. And I think they were the first Igorots or half Igorots that have studied in that university and studying anthropology for that matter. So I think that's one thing to acknowledge, that among the upcoming generation, there are lots of, let's not underestimate, I think, the evolving culture of the younger generation. That's second. And the third is the idea of this, that our culture is also evolving, that we are integrating, as you mentioned earlier, that we live in a globalized society, in a very diverse environment, and that we assimilate and we also integrate and we bring in our own culture into our own environment. And I think that's also quite important. And how you have mixed up Marilyn Monroe and you know, the different icons in the different eras are really actually very interesting, of that idea of assimilation and integration and the evolving of culture, and yet the historical or traditional culture of being indigenous remains strong and is still very visual, or it's in there.
Nice.
It's important that the young people are again curious about what their grandfathers and grandmothers knew.
Correct.
If in the beginning, and maybe many of us are probably part of that generation, we were always brainwashed na it's primitive, it's backward, it's pagan. So we also feel, oh, why will I assert the culture of my grandfather and grandmother? Because I've been told it's negative. So if the young people will wake up and say, teka muna, bakit tayo makikinig sa kanila? Why are we going to let them dictate to us what is cool and what is not cool, man? And I think this is, whether it's everything what we're learning from the so-called experts. Now, for example, let's just take that. I know I heard about that study that somebody was saying it's only 500 years
Ifugao
or
Atlas
100
by
years.
Conklin. Yeah.
Anyway, the thing is this, that knowledge is also evolving, and I'm not a scientist, but I remember one time I was walking through in Hapa, we were walking through certain places. And then I suddenly saw one mountain bend, another mountain, about 6 mountains, and they were all filled with rice terraces. Now I said, that cannot happen overnight.
No.
I mean, siguro if you have slaves and you just siguro you can do it overnight. Like maybe you can build a pyramid in maybe 20 years. But It's like, okay, di ba, you go to Metro Manila now, it's all asphalt, all buildings. For 2 hours, you're going through the traffic and it's all that. But once upon a time, there were just small patches of small towns that took years and years to grow into each other. So, okay, just from the knowledge that in an Ifugao family, when nung ti tatang, inherit is the oldest lang, no? And whether it's a boy or a girl, at least it's hindi gender biased. The oldest one will get it. So kung may mga 10 terraces na nagawa ni tatay in this area, the rest, 6 or 7 children have to go to the next mountain or to the next spring to start their 5 or 6 terraces. And so they keep evolving, going to the next mountain. But by that time, those terraces, how many generations will that be? So that these terraces start to grow to each other. By the time I came there, wow, 6 mountains, tuloy-tuloy yung rice terraces. I can't calculate whether it's X thousand or only X hundred, but I think we at least have to be able to also imagine that maybe it's not always infallible yung galing sa mga Western calculators, no? And it's not even a contest sinong mas tama. Your calculation is not as good as mine, or my GPS can measure better this or that. But if we believe at least ang galing ng ating forefathers, they even had that system of distributing their family wealth so that the others are forced to make their own rice terraces farther. Eventually, those rice terraces started connecting. So whether my conclusion is scientifically based, I cannot challenge. But it's still, we should be able to at least believe that the possibility na kaya rin natin ng ganun over, and maybe took several thousand years or several millennia to accumulate that amount. But it's good that if the children at least know that, they will become curious. They will become curious about what your grandfather knew. And once bumalik yung ganong curiosity, mabubuhay ulit yung kultura. Kasi hindi pa law of supply and demand. Nung awanti demand, nobody's curious, then the knowledge will die with the older generation. But today, if we get the young people to be curious, I think we will be the race of the future. We will contribute to the world.
Yeah. Richard, do you have something in mind?
Okay. Yeah, a few. But I'd like to say, first of all, that when you want to correct the misinformation of the colonial people, don't replace it with your own misinformation, because then the young people will see that you're not telling them the truth either, and then they'll just black out the whole thing. So, for example, Rizal operated on his mother. It didn't work. She went blind. Rizal's mother went blind. The Ifugao terraces, the age, it's controversial because the linguists trace back and they think that the Ifugao people had words for rice cultivation way before 500 years ago. And the examination was, I think, just one terrace somewhere in Bontoc. And of course, some terraces are newer than others, as Kidlat said. So if you examine one of the newer terraces and then say, oh, it's only 500 years old, you've got to examine all the other terraces. And do that. But what I wanted to say was, because you put the 1887 Madrid Expo on display, was that the Ilustrados there were very upset that they displayed ignorance, because they had been hoping the Spanish, that's why they put on their fancy Western clothes, to convince the Spanish that they were as equally civilized as the Spaniards were, and so they deserved to have equal treatment in the colony. Well, when they brought the Igorots here, they said the Spaniards took advantage of that. They said, see, that's the real Filipino. That's the guy with the bahag and eating the dogs. I don't know if they ate dogs in Madrid, but they ate dogs in 1904 and advertised it. They said, hide your dogs, the Igorots are coming, was one headline from a newspaper. So, and then Antonio Luna, when he wrote about that, he said when he walked the streets of Madrid during the expo, the people pointed to him and they said, Chino, Igorote, Filipino. And he was mad because he said, they're treating the Igorots and the Filipinos the same. Igorotes, Filipinos son lo mismo. So he was making a distinction between Igorot and Filipino. And then 2 years later, when Blumentritt wrote his foreword to Rizal's annotation of Morga, Blumentritt wrote, we don't need to extend constitutional liberties to the savage tribes. So they, you know, for them, the people were the lowland Christians.
Yeah.
And the Igorots for them were just a bit of an embarrassment.
Yeah.
So the question is, when the Filipinos finally got ready for independence, how did they look at the Igorots? How were they going to treat them? Were they going to treat them as equals or as second-class citizens? And so that history takes into the American colonial period up to independence.
Well, that was always a distinction. The first people who were colonized were the ones who say, hey, I have arrived. So they have to look down on somebody else. And I think a lot of the Lestrados who were in Spain, like Romulo, were trying to say, hey, they're not Filipinos. We can wear our top hat and our coat and tie. So we have arrived. So it was an embarrassment for them.
Yeah, it was.
But I think Rizal actually, but Rizal took it more on a maybe more on a human rights level, just saying, hey, come on, why are you treating us like a human zoo? So that was a little bit different from. Right. But you're right. Most of those people said, "Oy, kababain."
And actually, Rizal wrote to Blumentritt, and because one of them died, one of the people on exhibit died, he said, "I wish they all died, so that they wouldn't be mocked."
Well, it was more
they're better off dead than being mocked by the
probably to see. Yeah, it was the point that the humiliation from this condescending colonialists might have been better fate to not receive it and just be dead. Yeah.
Right. Manang Yvonne?
Yeah. Kidlat, I watched many videos of your art installation. If there are 3 art exhibits that you would like people to remember, what will they be and why?
Well, okay.
Good question.
My career has been more as a filmmaker, no? But actually in the last 2 decades, I said I'm tired of being called a filmmaker because I'm also creative in other things. Pero siguro, okay, this is one of my crowning glories. Kumbaga, boxing champion, it's a good time to retire with this exhibit in. Another thing is, if you've been to Baguio, I've created a artist village, which is with a very wild kind of architecture. No? I call it Batalana architecture. And I defied everything that you see in a normal House Beautiful magazine. And ako, hinihintay ko na pagka may bagyong dumating, tapos may 3 pine tree na natumba. I don't want to cut any trees, but may 3 pine trees na natumba. I call up the mayor. Say, Mayor, pwede ako nang sisimot nitong trees na ito para hindi masayang. And then they become part of this evolving organic architecture that I've created. So that's one of the things I'm also very proud of as a leftover of my architecture. And then maybe, if another in a metaphorical way, I'm proud of my 3 sons who are have learned to appreciate the indigenous in our Cordilleran brothers and sisters, and they have also learned to balance their lives with yung kalaman ng ating mga katutubo. It's not particularly in an art exhibition or in an art thing that I think what I've learned from he was really my mentor, si Lopez Nauyak, and he offered me a place on that mountain, and I built my abong on that place, and I had that opportunity to immerse myself and really learn why. I realized, wow, ang dami kong, I lost so many things because I was put in this Maryknoll school and then St. Louis school. Yeah, I learned to be a productive citizen who will work within a productive economy. But because I know the rules, I can ascenso ko.
Okay.
But that's because the structures were set there by the colonial regimes. No? So all our institutions are patterned after the American executive, American judiciary, legislative. So when you know the ropes, you can also enter that structure. But because you're aimed at that thing, I went for an MBA. I studied MBA in America
Oh, wow.
in 1964, and I don't want to name that, but okay, I got my diploma and my MBA from Wharton at University of Pennsylvania. But after 5 years practicing as an economist, kaya po niya, what am I doing here writing economic reports? Kung I have something else to offer the world. Maybe I have to liberate the artist in me. So the only way I could do it was I tore up my diploma. Wow. And I started growing my hair, and I never looked back. And I think now I'm contributing more than if I'm sitting in Wall Street, making the banks more rich. In this way, I have been able to contribute to, in some way, but also to the next generation.
No,
Nice.
but Kidlat, I was also referring.
Nag-unmute. Unmute.
Wait, again?
Oh, yung art installation in at the Palacio, because there are so many exhibits there. I was thinking, if there are 3 exhibits that you would want people to remember, what will they be and why? What are they and why?
3 in Palacio Crystal, or in
your art installation now.
Yeah. I think the elements that I would like to is, for example, the pie in the sky. Okay.
Yeah.
What I'm showing there, I'm saying those are the forefathers, the spirits. They know that they're looking down, they're watching what's happening 1521 in 2021, 1887. They're watching from up there, but they know, sige, kaya niya yan. And your culture, the culture will survive. Maski na nariyan si Marilyn Monroe, nariyan yung mga technology nila, no? So that's one. The other one is probably Rizal wearing his bahag. I would say, hey, if we know that our real strengths are coming from the experience and the worldview of our forefathers, and not just try to be with the latest, that's another thing that would be. And then maybe the battle of Mactan. I forgot to tell you the last part of the story there, no? Ayun. Naglabas, tapos na yung mga kanyon, mga bala, ubos na. So, yan, labas na yung mga arnis. And that's where Princesa Bulacna was a black belter siguro, if we use today's terms. Pero he's looking at Magellan. Magellan, punong-puno ng armor yan. No? Covered head to toe, para walang makalusot na arrow, walang makalusot na bala. But then, alam mo yung mga armor ng mga Europeans, although they were covered everywhere, there was one vulnerable spot, no?
Where?
When you're in the battlefield, and you're all in armor, tapos biglang naiihi ka, there's one place they have a hole there where you just
This one, huh?
relieve yourself, okay? Kasi ang hirap tanggalin lahat kung pupunta ka pa. Time out. So it was a real part of the armor. They just would spread their legs and whatever. Pero yan, alam ni Bulak na yan. So sabi, kala mo, astig ka, ha? Oh, the last blow, he got it right on the below.
Oh, that's
Look at that picture. There's that stick. There's that stick that's really getting there. Okay, it's a little bit of a naughty version of history, but I just tried it more gender equality. Na the women were as much a part of the battle as the macho guys, and so Magellan met his match.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kuya Kidlat. I think due to time, Manong Rick, any thoughts? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hill?
Are you talking to me? No.
Manong Hill, yeah. You can unmute.
Ako?
Yeah, Hill.
Gusto ko lang itanong kay Manong Kidlat kung any government representative local of Madrid or national government of Spain ay pumunta sa inyo o nakipag-usap sa inyo about your exhibit and
Interesting.
and so maybe you have shared those thoughts that you have shared to us about the colonialization of the Philippines in our indigenous culture.
Indigenous.
Actually, sa opening, somebody from the Ministry of Culture, I think, parang undersecretary, was present. But we did not really get a chance to talk kasi it was medyo after that there was a reception and alam mo na, it was. But I understand that at least for the organizers of yung Museo Reina Sofia, they feel that this is one of their major exhibitions in the past decade. No? It's okay. Yung Palacio Crystal is in the middle of Retiro Park, no? Retiro Park is napakalaki yan na siguro it's 20 times the size of Burnham Park. Ngayon, because of that, it's not only, pagka may museum or art gallery, mga art buffs, art lovers pupunta doon. And that's always a small handful. Pero kasi itong park, everybody comes here, no? So I remember nung tinatayo namin yung exhibit, makita mo mga lola, nagchichismisan doon, o kaya may mga joggers, or meron pang isang kiosk doon na may mga nagbubugi-bugi every other day. It's really a park for everybody. So when they're there, you know that in these 4 months, almost 400,000 people have gone to see the.
Oh, really? 400,000.
So I think that's a little impact. I mean, I'm not saying all 400,000 will start questioning colonialism, pero pati mga bata, makita mo, they ask a question to their mother. So nagkakaroon sila ng counting awareness na, hey, maybe we made some mistakes. 500 years ago. O kaya, wala, it can even be a simple question. Ay, Papa, Mama, how does the sails power the boat? No?
Yeah.
Ganun. Or even just why yung mga marami akong giant fish and giant octopus na nilagay doon sa. Yan, that was just to show that the Europeans in those days, kasi unknown yung big ocean, no? Hindi nila alam kung anong nasa dulo. As a matter of fact, yung main fear nung crew ni Magellan was every day, 99 days silang tumatawid ng ng Pacific. Baka bukas may Niagara Falls dito. We will fall over that. Kasi flat earth yung theory nila, di ba? So all these were little things that and in my scenario, yung created monsters nila, mga fears ng mga European, was for Enrique de Malacca, ito yung mga amigos niya, mga he would say, oh pare, saan ang daan papunta dun sa Limasawa? Sige nga. And then the fish would show them the way, or he would read the currents, or they could read the wind, di ba? That's what indigenous knowledge is, that you have harmony with nature, so you can consult the combination of the winds and the currents and the fish to find your way. So it's maybe it sounds romantic for me to summarize it like that, but I think the young people who were watching the exhibit, their fantasies maybe better than even watching a Walt Disney film.
Yeah, and your work
Just like
really, your work really articulate the history and yung identity natin as indigenous people in a very creative way that makes it really so special. So I think in a whole that makes also this exhibit like really in-depth. Yung meaning ba niya is in-depth, and it has like an impact in all aspects. No? Kung saan mo man tignan niya, mapa decolonization man, mapa what you call climate change issue man, it's all there, like our indigeneity as people. Huh? But I think Manong Ses has something to add as well.
Yes.
Yeah?
Could I be heard?
Yes.
Yeah. Manong Kidlat.
Manong, agkatawanan kayo. You're nearly there.
By 1 year. In Ibaloy, I would say, mamatang iya pantubtubalan tayo. Mamatang sa to, sa iya pantubtubalan tayo. I mean to say, our conversation is very good. And about it. Now, what I would like to know, Kidlat, is, the exhibit in its role to bring about consciousness on both the colonized and the colonizers. Do you have any plan to bring the exhibit with some updates maybe to commemorate also the St. Louis exhibition of 1904 in United States?
Yes.
Where again,
St. Louis exposition.
And maybe with additional wood carving or exhibit to show the American aspect of colonialization, which you touched on. I think it would also be very educational. And it might be a good project.
Well, I cannot plan these things. No, it's just depending on if like this, the Reno Museum people saw my exhibit at Sharjah, so they invited me. Ang alam ko, merong isang curator sa America who wants to try to see kung pwedeng i-tour. Ilang sobrang laki itong installation ko. It's much easier if it's just a room full of paintings that you have to transport, or maybe 10 or 15 sculptures. Pero ito 3 containers, it has to be an institution that has the space, no?
Yes,
And then they have to have also the budget.
Yes.
So maybe I cannot plan that, but if Kabunyan says, sige, punta, dalhin natin sa States. Baka mangyari.
Okay.
Nice.
But I would be happy if it can be shown, if we can celebrate 1904, the St. Louis Exposition, and really make the Americans reflect on how their colonial policy has resulted in also our confusion today.
Yes, that's really good. Thank you. And we would like to also acknowledge the presence of Leticia here in the room, and of course Aurora, Rachel, and Luniza. They are all from Mabika's Foundation. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you also get a lot. If you have something to say, please unmute. Yeah, Leticia, you have something in mind? How was it, the talk? I don't want to put you on the spot, but yeah, feel free to say. But because also of time, also our viewers on Facebook also just commented. Ben said that now that he's thinking about the Enrique story, one of the Datu Raha Kumabon just let the Spaniards enter, perhaps. Baka isuna ko diti may nga negotiator. And that was the comment from Ben Batad. Yeah, but yeah. But we do have a very interesting discussion. Thank you, ulit, Kuya Kidlat. And of course, we would like to also thank our sponsors for this episode. Yeah, we have the Igorot Cordillera Bima Ac-Europe, ICBE, ng Yvonne Belen, manang Kayan Belen, and also ng Cristina Moncado, who unfortunately isn't here with us tonight. But also Renijune Abaya, thank you for supporting our cause, and Manong Hil Catimo and family for your sponsorship for this episode, and Manong Cesar Taguba. And of course, we would also thank you all who watch us live on Facebook and also here via Zoom. So we have last few minutes for last thoughts. You can share it before we end the day. Yeah. So once again, thank you, and thank you. I hope you also enjoy your talk with us. It went a bit long, but I think you've shared a lot of things to like food for thought, ba, Kuya Kidlat. And I think I'm happy that we recorded this because I would like to go over it again and like take note of the messages that you had. Any other thoughts, Padua? Yeah, Yvonne?
Maybe we can also ask Kidlat, what do you think of the discussion and the questions that came in and the comments?
I feel very at home with this kind of conversation because I know na many of us here have mixed feelings, siguro, because the past has always made us not sure whether we can be proud of our indigenous ways, no? But I can only call attention to the fact that we were believing their narrative, no? Yung narrative ng mga colonizers namin, ay kaba 21, or your rituals are pagan, that we should, or your way of dressing is. And if we believe their stories, but maybe our grandparents couldn't help it because it was imposed on them. No? But now the world has evolved, and we can ask many questions. And I think we should ask those questions. And through these kinds of Zoom meetings, in spite of the pandemic, at least, wow, pwede tayong mag-ping-pong ng ating mga ideas.
Yeah,
and I'm hoping
just like now.
we have planted some seeds. And maybe, but maybe if I can summarize, let's be proud of our indigenous culture and pass it on to our kids.
Yes.
And then our kids will make this a better world.
Yes.
Very good. Actually, me for last. Actually,
kids.
It is we who are
bamboo camera. So
Kidlat. Actually, it is on.
Yeah.
Actually, it is we who are going abroad, who are more conscious of our being Igorots. That's why we have set up our organizations in the places where we are, and we are learning the dances in the Philippines, the culture that we have. And what we missed, I think, is to ask our grandparents, what was their culture, what was the culture before.
Yeah.
Because it is only now that we are learning the dances, all the symbols of the tapis, the pag nagusar tibaag. So
just make your next generation curious. Once they're curious, they will ask questions and they will start to practice. But if they're not curious because they believe the old stories, ayan, sayang.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have so much to lose.
True.
Thank you, thank you.
June?
So, let me close with a visual, okay?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Oh, your camera.
My bamboo camera, okay?
Yes, I saw that in Amsterdam.
This is a fish trap, itong body, okay? Di ba?
When?
Pumapasok yung isda.
Yeah, igat.
Tapos, sigak, yeah.
Igat.
And then in the end, nung akayat mo pa, you open it here and the fish comes out. But I made it into a bamboo camera to tell the young artists, we have to tell our own story. Okay?
Nice.
We must tell our story from our point of view. So the bamboo camera is because it's made of indigenous material, it's a symbol also of let's tell stories from our point of view. Okay? So ready? Everybody smile. You're on bamboo camera. Okay. Cut. So
Thank you so much for your
mabuhay ang
time.
indigenous natin. Mabuhay
Yeah,
ang indigenous.
mabuhay. And also,
Yes.
good luck to the rest of the rest of the exhibition. It will be ending on March 6th, right? March 6th in Madrid. Next week, yeah.
One by Sunday, other ibabaklas on Monday.
One more question, but we are running out of time, so I will just greet you. Happy birthday. When? Soon.
October.
Happy 88th. Happy 80th. But it doesn't show. It doesn't.
Ang pagbati ko sa mga anak ko, happy orbit day, no? Kasi
happy birthday.
Kasi every time we spend the birthday, naka 365 days tayo, nakaikot tayo sa araw, di ba?
Happy orbit day.
And I prefer to sing happy orbit to you. Kasi
happy orbit.
Yeah.
Kasi yung happy birthday is owned by Warner Brothers. They can sue you if you sing it without other permission.
Happy orbit.
So yan, happy orbit to you. Thank you for that.
Well, that is another indigenous greeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. We have to end the night. We extend for like an hour, but hope everyone enjoyed the talk and the discussion and had a relaxing, listen, like watching and listening to Kuya Kidlat. We really learned a lot today. I also learned a lot today. And tune in again for next month, every first Monday of every fourth Monday of the month, for our next IP. Thank you, Kuya Kidlat, Richard, Manong Ces, Hill, Manong Rick, and Manang Alice, Leticia, Rachel, Aurora, and Luniza. Manang Yvonne, thank you so much. And kindly thank also Kidlat Senior. Kuya Kidlat.
Kidlat Senior, salamat daw.
Yes. Okay. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.